for certain stuff, but they found a lot of questions. Not a lot of people here.
Okay, let's see. I don't know if this is working. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I know we have a little bit of a small crowd, and I somewhat anticipated this based on the fact that Labor Day was yesterday, and today is also the first day of school. But we are taping this, so we can use this perhaps on the TV station as well as in the future if we want to go back to it or replay some of the information that we're going to be talking about tonight. So thank you all for being here. The main discussion this evening is going to be on pedestrian and bicycle safety awareness. And the governor recently announced that September would be Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Month, and the town decided to support that and did a proclamation to do so. And so tonight we're going to be talking about ways that pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists can all work together in being safe on the roads, because as we continue to move forward in the town, there's going to be more sidewalks, there's going to be bike routes, and there's obviously going to be cars. And so given that, we need to figure out how everyone can safely maneuver within the town. So before we start here, I'm just going to ask in the audience if there's anyone that has some announcements that they'd like to share with everyone, things that are happening. If they don't, then we can move on to the regular program. Council, Luke Cousins, come on, stand up, please.
Yes, so the next big thing that the Art Center is putting on is Bunko Night, Halloween Bunko.
Okay.
It's always a fundraiser for us, and we welcome everybody to come in costumes and play Bunko. And then in November 14th and 15th, we're doing something that we've never done before. We're having a sale. And everything in the center is going to be on sale for $99 from us.
Oh, wow.
So you can pick up some really phenomenal art at a terrific price.
Okay, now say the dates again. The first one you were saying for Bunko, Halloween Bunko,
The
22nd of October.
And November 14th and 15th for, I have those.
Okay, November 14th, 15th. Excellent. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilwoman Sinicki.
Yes, I'd just like to invite everybody to Oktoberfest. That is the first Saturday in October, October 3rd. And it is a family-friendly event, and everyone's welcome to join in the fun. It should be a great time. It's sponsored by the BBA, so there's a lot of local businesses that all contribute towards this, and so I hope to see you all there.
That should be great. Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else? So before we start our regular program, I'm going to have Amy Jo Hendricks, who is the Acting Director of Parks and Recreation, come up and give us a brief update of what is happening over at the Community Center. And Amy Jo, you can use this if you'd like, or you can stand up here. It's your choice.
I'll stand up there.
Okay.
My paper's down. Well, today there's nothing happening at the community center. We have moved everything out. Well, just about everything. Our staff has been busy the last several weeks packing boxes and moving them to storage bins and different nooks and crannies all over town. So we're finally moved out. We have relocated up to Cedar Park Shopping Center, right above Neighbors, Subway, right up in the office space there. So come by and see us.
What is the
It's
actual address?
262M Cedar Lane, and it's room 4, 7, and 10. The neighbor across the hall wanted 6, so we just changed numbers. So we've council approved Keller Brothers to do the construction on the project at the community center. We had a pre-construction meeting today. It probably will not start till the end of September at this point. We have relocated most of our classes to the fire department, Patrick Henry Library, Vienna Presbyterian Church, Vienna Baptist Church, some classes here at Town Hall. We're still trying to find some space. Our teen center is now located up at Cedar Lane in room 10. It's a nice space. looking forward to the new center. We're looking forward to having HVAC that works, a roof that doesn't leak, and electric and water and sewer that doesn't spout water everywhere. The first part of the renovation, when it does start, will be the switching of the bike trail back to its original location. So that's going to go from where it is now to the other side of the parking lot next to that culvert. There's going to be some enhancements, safety enhancements, to cross over to Park Street over onto the other part of the trail. So you'll start to see people milling around there and fencing going up. That'll be the first thing we see. We'll know more probably by the end of the month as to which phases, how that phasing is going to happen. The work hours for construction are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we're hoping that it doesn't interfere with any of the neighbors sleeping in the morning. They've promised, the construction company has been very accommodating with our concerns. So I think if there are any problems, they will let us know. We can let them know, and they'll work with us. That's about it. Do you have any questions? I can try to answer them.
Groundbreaking.
Oh, that's right. I brought those. I have an invitation to our groundbreaking on September 17th at 4 p.m. So I'll leave those up here for anybody that would like them.
That sounds great. Yeah. The community is invited to the groundbreaking on September 17th at 4 o'clock over at the community center. So that should be exciting. Is this working? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much, Amy Jo. And now we have Mike Gallagher, who is the Deputy Director of Public Works, who is handing out some information, and he's going to give us an update on some infrastructure projects that are happening in town.
Okay, so I'm sure, as everyone has noticed, that there's a lot of construction going around town, and obviously not just the development community, but the town's been incredibly busy as well. The biggest project, and I'm going to focus on sort of the pedestrian and bicycle projects, but what I gave you is all of our projects and active projects and context for updates and links to the project pages. But one of the big projects we have going on is Fallen Lane is under construction. And that is from just before Maple Avenue up to Eccles Street. And that's going to include a new sidewalk as well as bike routes that will continue the bike routes existing up near Navy Federal Credit Union and continue down towards Maple Avenue. Another big projects that you've probably seen is Cottage and Tapawingo. Those new sidewalks are, I think, 95% complete now. There's maybe some minor details that still have to be finished on those. And one of our other exciting projects that I know staff is really excited about is the Park and Locust mini roundabout that is that's finished design, and we're going through the final stages of having VDOT sign off on that because the VDOT applied for the grant on our behalf for federal highways. VDOT is looking at our plans and making sure, they're providing us some comments, and so we're, I believe we've satisfied all of VDOT's concerns, and we expect to have that out for bid and under construction and completed by the end of October. We're keeping our fingers crossed. So, as well as we have a new sidewalk on Aito Road that is, I would say, probably 75% complete, as well as on Glendon Street Northeast, and that is, believe it's just under construction again. We had a lengthy delay from Washington Gas. They had to relocate a line that they finally got through, and they did that, so we can now complete that project. John Marshall Drive Northwest as a new sidewalk as well. That is under construction. And let me see. we have some signal upgrades. I don't know if you've noticed on Nutley and Courthouse, we've upgraded those signals. We're doing the same thing at Center Street here at Maple Avenue, and also at Center Street and Courthouse and Lawyers Road. We're replacing all those signals there, and enhancing some of the crossing, the audible and visible pedestrian crossing, pedestrian activated signals. And so I know the list is very long, so I just wanted to focus on some of the current projects and the pedestrian and focused ones. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Yes.
A couple of the projects are under design.
Yes.
How long from under design does it usually take in terms of months or years to get to under construction and complete?
I would say usually between 6 to 12 months of design, and that is because we do a lot of public outreach and we really consult with the citizens, and we make sure that we fine-tune the plans. And a lot of times we have to go back to the engineer and say, well, we need to fix this. So it kind of depends on the project itself. But
And just to follow up, how much longer then, if plan design is about 6 to 12 months, then there's construction, correct? Which
Correct.
is another, how much?
Well, that depends on the project too. For instance, Fallen Lane is a huge project, and we anticipate that to be about 6 months. Whereas the mini roundabout is a pretty condensed project, and it's really focused on putting in new curb and gutter, and that we expect to take about 2 weeks. So. For portions of the project, yes, there will be detours around that intersection in order to get that installed. Yes.
And the roundabout, when do you expect construction to start on that?
We expect that to start probably in October.
Thank you so much.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
How do you prioritize, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but how do you prioritize, what sidewalks to do or what signaling to do and when? Can you talk a little bit
Sure.
about the process you go through?
Well, most of our projects, particularly the transportation-based, are we leverage our capital improvement money with grants. And so depending on what kind of grant we get, indicates what priority, as well as citizen petitions that can raise a project to a priority. For instance, the Cottage and Tapawingo sidewalk was we call it a Walk to Metro grant from the federal government. And so that was a 1 mile radius from the Nutley Street Metro. And we carved that out and we identified areas of missing sidewalk. And so,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the update. So we are going to get started with our regularly scheduled program. So today, as I said, we're talking about bicycle, pedestrian safety, and it's really a combination of looking at all three: motorists, pedestrian, and bicyclists, and how can they all work together to be safe on the roads, on the sidewalks, and in the community. And so today we have with us a large panel, as you can see. We have people from the police office here, to Farhan, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Chief Jim Morris, who are here to talk about what's happening from the police side and from the kind of regulation side of things, and what they see, because they see all the different conflicts that are happening within town. And then we have a group of people here from pedestrian, bicycle, and both pedestrian advisory committee and bicycle advisory committee. And those two groups were formed specifically in mind to report to the Transportation Safety Commission, but with a focus of saying how can the town be better prepared to handle more bicyclists and more pedestrians, and how do we make it more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And so that's really the goal of the town, because I think long term, when we look at the big picture of our community, we have Tyson's growing in a very big way. Down 123, we have Metro West on the southwest side of the town. We have Mosaic, and we are going to remain primarily single-family residential. There's going to be some changes to that. That's primarily what we're going to be. And given that, we are not planning on widening any roads or any intersections. Those are some of the things that have been suggested to the town. That is not kind of the way we see ourselves growing. What we see is looking at our community and saying, how can we put in sidewalks to make it safer for pedestrians? How can we put in bike routes to make them be able to maneuver around town? And then how can we time our lights? You know, Mike Gallagher talked about improving our light timing and making our intersections work well, especially during rush hour, and to keep people moving along Maple Avenue. That is our main corridor, rather than cutting through our side streets as much. So that is the overriding goal. And so as that happens, there's going to be hiccups along the way and ways we're going to have to think creatively. The roundabout is one of those things. I give a lot of credit to the Transportation Safety Commission who came up with this idea, and so it's something we're going to try and see how that works. But we have to be creative and to think, how can we, you know, make people move in a positive way throughout the community. So I think this is a beginning or a starting point. The discussions are going to continue as we move forward, and I think that's the best thing. I think one of the best things we can do is educate people. I think that's the best way to let people know what, you know, how can we move through the community safely. I think it's starting at a young age. We have safe routes to school at almost all our elementary schools. There's a very big focus on biking and walking to the elementary schools. It's really exploded actually over the last 5 years. And so I see that trend continuing. And so hopefully from a young age, our citizens are going to really know how to bike and walk throughout the community, and we'll continue that as adults if they stay here. So we have with us today Sue Ormanlin from the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Julie Hayes from the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Sean McCall, and he is from the Transportation Safety Commission, as well as he also sits on the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Tim Fricker from the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and as you can see his shirt, Bikes at Vienna. He has been a wonderful advocate in the town for bicycles, as well as being a wonderful small business owner on Church Street. And then we also have Charlie Schruck, who is on the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And so, as well as Charlie, tell me, you also were in Fairfax County and specialized.
Yeah, I was the bicycle coordinator.
So he was the bicycle coordinator for Fairfax County, so has a lot of background in this area. So I'm really grateful for all of them being here today and willing to talk to us about safety. So I will let Chief Morris, and please start this off.
Thank you. As the mayor explained when we began, our goal is safety. That's what we're here for. That's what we want to make accomplished for everybody, to make Vienna the best community for walking, for riding your bicycle, and also for getting through and driving through the community. Certainly, we can write tickets. We're very good at it. We can enforce laws for cars going down the street. We can enforce laws against bicyclists. I don't think that's the answer. I think what we need to do is really get out, do some outreach to the community, do some prevention, do some education, and maybe get everybody, you know, looking out for each other. On a lot of, we investigate the accidents involving bicycles. We investigate the accidents involving pedestrians. There's a slide later on you'll see about bicycle accidents over the last year in Vienna. It's a 50-50 fault. Half of them were the fault of the bicyclist, half of them were the fault of the motorist. And in all honesty, certainly it matters, but it doesn't matter. I don't want the accidents to begin with. So that's what our goal is. As you see on the screen, when I met with the mayor several weeks ago, we talked about this, and we talked about what we can do to make bicycling in Vienna just safer. I think the complaint specifically was where the path crosses Church Street, and we talked about some of our efforts there. I went back and met with Sergeant Farhan about, you know, what we could do in that area. Doing some research, he found out, you know, we already have a program. The Eye-to-Eye program was in Vienna several years ago. I mean, you all probably have heard of it before. Already have literature on it, already have a banner on it, already have educational material on it. So that's where I'd like to start, is bring this program back out and bring it out to the forefront. Bring it out to community groups, bring it out to bicyclists. If you know of groups that meet, we would be glad to come and talk to them, because it applies both to pedestrians and bicyclists. The premise, the basic premise behind the eye-to-eye program is make eye contact with the other driver. It really, or the car, the bicyclist, the pedestrians. That's really the basics behind it. Anybody that goes walking, anybody that goes running, I do both. Everyone in this room probably knows I walk from the police station to Starbucks. Myself and Captain Janicki, every single morning and probably 3 times a week, we keep going over to the post office. So I walk the streets. I see the right turns. I go jogging all the time. I learned very quickly, I don't cross the street with a car making a right until the car sees me and I see the car. We make eye contact. Otherwise, I can't count the number of times I would have been run over. Not because it's a bad driver, it's because the driver's looking at traffic, not at me, not looking for someone crossing the street. That's the premise behind the program. That's what we really want to get the word out, that it's important for everybody to just cooperate and do little safety measures, whether you're driving, walking, or riding, to make it safe. And these are just some examples. In a shopping center, bicyclists coming across the sidewalk, a car entering a shopping center. Another common occurrence. For fault, everyone asks me who would be at fault in accidents like this. It depends where the vehicles are. If the bicycle's in the roadway, it's probably going to be the car's fault. If the bicycle's not in the roadway yet, it's probably going to be the bicyclist's fault. And that's another issue. A lot of times, motorists are their own worst enemies. They'll stop at the path, where the path crosses. They'll stop and wave people across and let people go. That's really not what those are designed for. It's really not what the law reads. The law is if there's someone in the crosswalk, you have to stop. Self-imposed I'd rather traffic flow and bicyclists and motorists look for the opening and go across, and when people are crossing, the motorists respect that. You don't get halfway across and have a car come behind you. And Sergeant Farhan in a few minutes will talk a little bit about some codes that we can enforce, and we will enforce. That's certainly going to be a prong of our efforts. But also, like I said, I think the main thing is education and prevention first. But 2, we'll talk about what is out there and what can be used as a tool if we need to. And this is the scenario I talked about. Like I said, I've been in this one a million different times, when a car's turning and you're coming across the street and you want to cross the street. You may have the right of way, but I always phrase it, especially when I'm out running. Yes, I might have been right, but if I get hit by the car, it doesn't matter if I'm right or not. I don't want hit by a car. I don't care if I can point to the car and say, you needed to see me here. I don't want hit by a car. I don't want anyone hit by a car. These are the bicyclist accidents we had over the last 12 months in Vienna. We should have pulled the pedestrian accidents also, but I can get those too. It's just a little search. We pulled the bike. We were just thinking bicycle at the time, so we pulled these originally. But Lieutenant Taylor will make sure I have the pedestrian ones also. And as I explained, I think it's a 50-50 split, and then there's one that it was undetermined. It could have been both motorist and pedestrian fault. So it's across the board. But that's what I want to focus on. That's the slide. When the mayor asked me to come next year, that's the slide I don't want to have, or be able to say that's been reduced to 0. That'd be really nice to come and talk about.
It's interesting, 4 of 5 are going to be black.
Mm-hmm. Right. This is the banner. I was just speaking with the mayor. We were a little behind on getting it put up across Maple, because there's a whole pecking order for getting a banner up, and currently Navy Federal has it up for their 5K. I'm going to look for other opportunities in town to put it up, whether it's on the side of a building or a fence, just maybe event-based, getting it out and up for people to see would be our goal. And we already have it. Like I said, this was stuff we already have. Another idea, and I spoke with the mayor about that, I think could help, or at least start the process. We have a lot of road crossings once you get into Vienna on that path pretty quickly. And you all tell me, it's probably a pain when you're trying to ride down. You have several roads you have to cross. I think it's important maybe to warn bicyclists on the path that, hey, you're entering Vienna, and by the way, you're about to come across several road crossings, in a fairly short distance. I know just when I run it, I cross 2. So I'm sure bicycling, when you're cycling, it's probably nothing to get to Cross Park than to get down to Maple. So we're thinking it'd be a good idea to warn the motorists as they come in. The park authority's already said we can do this. We just have to present a sign theme, a sign design to them, and I'm sure Mr. Gallagher will gladly have that sign made for us.
One of the things to be aware of, I know Fairfax County, because of Tyson's putting up directional signs and warning signs, so you may want to check with what the county is, just to be consistent along the trail.
Okay.
Because so just to see what they have, and we might be a little different on what we want to say, but
Right.
just to be in sync with what they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought, like I said, I thought it was a good idea just to get it up and just warn people both directions coming in. And for the most part, that's our prevention efforts. We're discussing also getting flyers, because one of the things we're going to do is go to these crossings and just place officers there and stop cyclists coming across that aren't, yielding to traffic, stop traffic coming across. Not to stand there and write tickets all day. What I'd like to do is maybe have something to hand them, to hand a motorist, to hand someone on a bicycle, or even hand a pedestrian that's not paying attention coming across the street, just reminding folks, hey, you got to watch. Someone's going to get hit by a car here. So we're looking at that. We have some quotes on some costs to get some informational material out to people. One of the debates we're talking about, though, is if people are riding bikes, we don't want to hand them a big sheet of paper. So we're thinking maybe something a little smaller or something a little just with some of these little points on it. Eye to eye, here's some pointers, and I'll work with you all on what those pointers should be, what they should look like, what is good informational material for cyclists coming through. And at the same time, same thing for the motorists coming. If we see motorists that, maybe don't violate the law, but, pretty close to doing it, stop them anyway and just have a little chat. Maybe give them some informational material. Have a little checkpoint about the way you should be acting at these crossings. Just all kinds of efforts like that we're prepared to do over this month. And just, like I said, Sergeant Farhand's taking the lead on it. So if you have any ideas, please feel free to shoot me an email, let me know, stop by the station. If you have specific concerns, let me know. Everyone's pretty good about giving me locations to do radar and do enforcement. So, but certainly this to me is a open project. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the preventative efforts that need done. So we are certainly open to anything that we can do to solve the problem, basically. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Farhand. See, I talk about the nice stuff. He's going to talk about what a ticket's going to look like and what code's going to be written on it. Exactly.
Obviously, like the chief said, our goal is the prevention. Make sure everybody gets home safe. I think you get in an accident, nobody wins. Whether you're the car driver hitting the bicycle or the bicyclist getting hurt, nobody wins. I'm going to go over some Vienna codes and state codes, just briefly, and what you're responsible for as a bicyclist, a driver, or a pedestrian. The bicyclist under state code and Vienna code has to actually operate the bicycle at a reasonable speed. You see sometimes bicyclists just zooming by, and usually some of that contributes to crashes because they don't stop. And you can't ride two abreast. You can't do stunts or ride down, carry another rider on the bicycle. That's more of a what the bicyclist can and cannot do actually while riding. Now, this is part of it. We consulted with VDOT and VDOT website and got some of the information here. Every person operating a bicycle on the roadway, and certainly in the town of Vienna, they have to ride as near to the right side of the roadway as practicable. You have to signal your turns, your stops, and all of that. When an officer signals you, you have to obey the officer's directions. You have to yield to pedestrians, crossing roadways, you have to remember, when a bicycle is in the roadway, it's considered under state code a motor vehicle. You have to obey all the laws that a motor vehicle does, a car, certainly. Making signaling all your turns, stop, and yes, ma'am.
I've heard
Yeah, they changed that basically because the bicycles, they don't trigger the sensors.
Right.
So now, and I have a slide on that, basically you can stop at the red light, and after 2 cycles or 2 minutes, whichever is shorter, you can proceed with due caution through the intersection. But you have to wait at least that long.
And that's specifically designed because they're not triggered.
They're not
If there's
triggered.
traffic there, you're part of
Yes.
traffic. Okay.
Yes, it's 2 cycles, 2 minutes, whichever comes first, and you can proceed through.
See why I brought him?
And it talks about bicycles on private property. You can't ride any bicycles on private property. You can ride a bicycle on the sidewalk when it's not safe to ride on the road. You certainly can get on the sidewalk, and that you're considered then a pedestrian. That's another, just more of the same here. And if you look at number 1 there, that's the one I just talked about. You come to a full and complete stop at the intersection for 2 complete cycles or 2 minutes, whichever is shorter, then you can proceed. It's right here. And of course, if you're in the roadway, you have to yield the right of way for approaching traffic from the opposite direction, making a turn, left turn. You got to obey all the laws as a motor vehicle. This is the big one here as it pertains to bicycles. We have stop signs on the trails, and you see this a lot, at least on the police side. Bicyclists do not stop. They just proceed through the intersection, and people ask, what could we charge the bicyclist with? And that's the state law that we could charge them under, is basically not stopping before entering the highway, because you have to stop before you enter that highway. And that's the state code for it.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think the state enabled legislation that we could actually enable enforcement of the stop signs on the path, if I'm not mistaken. We haven't done that, but I think we have the ability.
Okay, that's good to know.
So.
This actually pertains to drivers. Drivers, and again, I think I met with that gentleman here last week at the police station over this. When do you stop for a pedestrian or bicyclist crossing a crosswalk? And there's some kind of misunderstanding. When do you stop? A lot of people, stop when they see a bike coming probably, 50 feet away. And I see this a lot on Park Street. And they will stop way ahead while the bicyclist is still moving. And that kind of sets up the bicyclist because the other person coming the other way is not seeing this.
Right.
And we're conditioning the bicyclist to just go through the intersection. We're not helping them. So the bicyclist proceeds through the crosswalk, and that's how we get accidents. You are not obligated to stop until the person enters the crosswalk. That's what state law is. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
When they enter the crosswalk, that's when you stop.
Okay, so I'll tell you, I do exactly that. I see the bicyclist coming down, and so I stop, because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to wave them on, I'm trying to make eye contact with them, say,
Right.
and
Yeah.
So, and try not to fight.
See, yeah, we're
that's
getting.
because I want them to be able to,
Right.
see, but you're right.
Yeah, so then they get used to that, and that we're setting them up for failure, and not to. Also, people behind you all of a sudden are stopping because they don't know what you're doing. There's nobody around, and you're stopping. So that's the big one that I see a lot of, mostly on Park Street. So. And again, the under 924. When you're jaywalking, it says no pedestrian shall enter or cross an intersection in disregard of approaching traffic. You can't just walk into the middle of the road to cross in front of cars for a reason. So, and that's more of it. You can't step onto a highway in front of motor vehicles because it's hard for them to see you. If you're crossing in 300 block of East Maple towards the Giant, it's hard to see anybody crossing there. That's very dangerous. And that's more of a map of the whole trail, how far it goes. We get a little chunk of it. We have actually a busy chunk of the trail. And that's basically the code sections that we went over and where you can actually find them. There's my email, Lieutenant Taylor, who's my boss and commander of operations. Feel free to email us with any questions, any concerns, any suggestions. Absolutely, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Also, any venues that you attend where you wouldn't mind two or someone coming and talking, whatever the venue is. If it's people, it could be drivers, it could be walkers, it could be cyclists. If there's going to be a meeting, if there's going to be a discussion, we will gladly come.
We'd love to come out
bring
and
this
talk to you
information.
guys. Absolutely.
It really doesn't matter. So like I said, we aren't approaching this from one side or the other. My goal is just to eliminate the slide that says we have accidents in the town. Is really my goal, regardless of how we have to do that.
I was just curious. I mean, you guys, or the town just installed a hawk signal on Maple.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, has there been any feedback on that? I've seen it operate twice. So.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just curious.
I've heard from some motorists they're confused as to how that works, what it is. Does it just cycle? It seems, I don't know if it's because people aren't used to it yet. A lot of motorists I've talked to said caught them off guard. So that's the last thing you want to do with the crossing is to catch someone off guard. I think the longer it's there, the longer it's used, it will be a useful crossing and a safe crossing is the goal of it.
Like compliance-wise?
Yeah. I've gone down, I have not received any complaints of anyone just blowing through it. I haven't seen that in going up and down the street. I'm sure early on that was occurring. I have no doubt about that just by the comments I heard about how it caught them off guard. To me, that's interpreted as you drove through it. But,
This is the new signal on, I should let Mike Mike talk about it. It's a new signal on Maple. It's by the Jade Center, I believe.
Right, the Dunkin' Donut.
It's a pedestrian signal. The pedestrian activates it.
that's the only time it's activated.
Right. It has to be activated by a pedestrian.
Is there standard signage that's supposed to go with that? Because there's one of those on Eisenhower Avenue in Alexandria, and there's different signage that kind of warns the driver, gives the driver more information about when they have to stop. And because I heard people talking about they didn't know, like they went red and then it started flashing, and the driver didn't understand because there were no pedestrians. They were actually able to go, but they thought they had to stay immobile as long as the light was red. But I think the sign in Alexandria warns drivers that you can proceed on a flashing red with no pedestrians in the crosswalk. Maybe that would help.
Where'd you say the sign was?
Eisenhower Avenue, just as you're,
By the animal shelter there?
yes, and, well, the other end.
Right.
Heading towards the old animal shelter.
Okay.
By the cemetery, where you're coming to the traffic circle.
Right.
It's right over there.
So I will say, I have heard from a couple of people who work in the buildings on the other side, that they like having that as an access point. They have not complained that people didn't stop, but they just said that they liked having the crosswalk, that they didn't have, because they would just run across the street.
Right.
So, traffic lights, from Nutley all the way down to Warriors.
Right.
So hopefully that is, but you're right, I think it sounded so confusing, drivers.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I came home on Saturday night, and it worked beautiful. Somebody was crossing, very visible, bunch of cars stopped, including me. It was very visible, it was very clear, the signs were very visible, clear.
Good.
It looked like the person seemed very safe and felt very safe in crossing over to the Dairy Queen. It was very clear.
Okay, good.
I think people are getting used to it.
They are, and that's the importance of it is, if we're going to tell people crossing the crosswalk, we have to have them where people can cross, because, nobody's going to walk a ridiculous distance to cross. So hopefully your experience is exactly what the experience of that is going to be from now on.
It might help, and maybe you already have, but I didn't notice it, to have in the town newsletter, just, have you seen the new crosswalk, and just a real short blurb about
That's a good
what it's
idea.
for. So I do think a lot of people in the town read those, so
Okay,
I
sure.
think it was people understanding what we need to do.
Okay.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I have a question about helmets. Could you just briefly tell what the law is for helmets? Because I see a lot of adults not wearing helmets.
Right.
Which doesn't seem to be.
In the town of Vienna, 14 and under, you're required to have a helmet. Yeah. Unfortunately, for adults,
Optional.
Optional. It would be, it's great to have a helmet. I would advise anybody to have a helmet.
Yeah, it's 14 and under, and to be honest, that's one of my favorite programs, because usually you can get DMV grants to get helmets. So you do bicycle rodeos, and you give them out like candy at the rodeos to the little kids. It's a really good tool.
Well, thank you guys. So next, you guys have some things. I need to really take out.
Some slides over there.
Sure.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. No, you can't come over.
You can do it. I have to.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll actually do it. You can talk. I'll
Oh,
press.
thank you.
Sure, have a seat.
Hello, I'm Julie again from the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and we thought we just have a few slides, so don't want to take up too much more time. Would love to hear from the audience and get more feedback. But we thought we'd give you some background about our mission and our objectives, what we've been up to over the last year, and some of the activities we've been working on, and then Sue is going to talk about one of them in particular, which is our walk-friendly application, and she'll talk a bit about that. And then we thought it'd be fun to look at some of the other innovative communities in our country who are really taking this topic seriously and taking a broader stance as well, not just thinking about making things safety, but also approaching it from a health and environmental and economic perspective as well, which is also in our mission. And so briefly, our objectives have been, connecting and expanding our existing sidewalks has been top priority this past year for us. Also, finding ways to make it a more pedestrian-friendly community, and enhancing pedestrian access to town amenities. And one thing that we hope to focus more on over the next year is to provide those open communication mechanisms to the public. And thank you to the mayor for hosting this forum, because this is an important way to garner your feedback. And if you have any suggestions for how we can also garner more public comments and solicit more public involvement, please let us know, because that's our aim over the next year. Some of the key initiatives that we've been working on this past year have involved providing recommendations to the Transportation Safety Commission, which was then approved by Town Council to put together the pedestrian master plan. It's the town's first pedestrian master plan. It was approved in February, again, primarily focused on sidewalk infrastructure, and hopefully we'll take a look at it over the course of the next year to see if we can, what there may be to expand it into other areas like crosswalks and lighting and other pedestrian related topics. We've also built a sidewalk inventory. Now this is just putting together all of those sidewalk projects that the town has been working on. I think there were 7 different spreadsheets related to safe routes to school and some of the sidewalk projects related to metro access, getting that all into one place so we can figure out how to prioritize better. What's needed, where are the grants available, and really have that in one place, and we can be updating that over the course of the next year as well. Skip over walk friendly because Sue's going to talk about that quickly, but also just wanted to highlight that we take on any research and activities that is passed on to us from the Transportation Safety Commission and Town Council. So we do that throughout the course of our work, and we do meet once a month on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, and I believe town citizens are welcome to attend those sessions. So as well, getting more folks involved in kind of how we're thinking and the recommendations we're making would be fantastic. So I'll turn it over to Sue to talk about the Walk Friendly recognition program, which is a pretty awesome national program that we're applying for.
Okay, well, the Walk Friendly recognition is a nationally recognized program. It is a very detailed process that we're going through. A lot of information that I have to get either from the website of the town or call in individuals to get that type of information from them. It's very detailed. There's one gold city, so there are 4 levels. You can be gold, platinum, gold, silver, or bronze. We hope to have the application completed and presented December 1st is the next deadline for it. They can be entered either June 1st or December 1st of each year. So we hope by December to have everything cleared and ready to go, and we can put the application in on December 1st, and we'll see what comes of it. Working through the process, there are many things that the town of Vienna has going for it. Obviously, the mayor and the town itself is very focused on pedestrian safety, on making this a walk-friendly community. So we found had nothing but cooperation when it comes to either gathering facts and or presenting suggestions of ways that we could maybe be safer or build a better connection with all of the trails and whatnot that we have. So. But along the way, we have also found that there are certain things they are asking us for in the application that we don't have. And so it's been a very good learning process in trying to sort out, well, we don't have an answer to this, or we don't really do that, such as counting. There are pedestrians counting before dark and after dark, how many people are walking. So Arlington, I know, just received recognition, and that is one of the things that they have, and it's actually a live counter. And that would be interesting to see. How many people do we have walking? Why are they walking? Are they walking to dentists and doctors? Are they just walking for coffee? Are they just out walking? So it would be good to have some of that information out there so we know who we're talking about when we talk about pedestrians and why they're out there and what they're doing. So we're also learning as we go some of the things that we can certainly do as a town. And now I think the biggest part of that, because there are a number of things, is to prioritize how can we achieve, we can have long-term goals that as we work and build the littler things, we can add up to the bigger goals. So it'll be a matter of prioritizing what can be done and what can be done when and who we can achieve these things with. One of the things that came also from the application is that we asked the mayor to sign an international charter for walking. And this was a program that has been long established, and it is 8 pages as to what their vision is, what the actions are that are required, improvements that can be made, supportive land use and spatial planning. So even from that application itself, there are many things that we have learned that we could do that would be relatively easy, some, and some not so easy to do to improve the safety, to improve the input of others in the community. And going along with what the mayor and the police have already said, I think that one of the biggest things that we need to do is to get the word out there, to be more visual as far as, hey, this is a walk-friendly community, and what does that mean to us? So I think education, all of that should play a very big part in our moving forward in this, just making people more aware. This is what our goal is to try and be walk-friendly. The more input we have from people, the better, that we can make better changes. So I certainly think, as I said, that the town is supportive of all that we do in order to achieve this. So That has been a long, lengthy process. Also, along the application, we have learned a lot of things that we can do and should do. And as you look at these towns that have already been recognized, it's very interesting to see what they have done. Some things are applicable to the town of Vienna, others are not. But it really has been an eye-opener, and it's right there in front of us. So it's great to have that access right at our fingertips for things that we can do.
And leading into, oh, did you have a question?
No, I was going to say, Sue, I knew you were applying by December 1st. When do we hear back from them? Did they give you any feedback? Or is it
The end of January, usually they try to get back to you. So it won't be too long, and then, of course, we'll celebrate.
Yes, that's another thing. So that's another thing we put in the newsletter. So that could be, if we hear by the end of January, to add in the March newsletter, hey, this is a walk-on routine, what does that mean, and what are we doing? So that can kind of be a focus. So that's great. I also have the mayor's at your service around that time.
Oh,
so
good.
There you go.
do something
that.
else.
Last slide, Sue mentioned kind of looking at other communities that have been innovative and strategic in this area. I've highlighted Seattle and Arlington here. Seattle has been recognized with the platinum, the very highest recognition that you can get. Arlington has gold, though, which is the next one up, and it's close to us, so definitely a town that we can look to see what they're doing. Obviously, you know, both of these cities have a bigger population, likely more funding, but there's still some of what they're doing is, I think, important for us to look to as we look to kind of get beyond you know, some of the stuff that we've been doing. A couple of things that I wanted to call out that Arlington has been doing. They have a dedicated site that's a county-wide initiative, so it's with town officials, the businesses there, and with citizens to promote all of the different aspects and benefits of walking. And they might have a bicycling portion as well. I didn't look too far into it, but that wouldn't surprise me. Another thing is the transit-oriented planning that they have been prioritizing. So all of their planning and engineering is that all of those folks go through specific training programs to be thinking about how can we rebuild or build this street with pedestrians and bicyclists in mind. And maybe we're already doing some of that, but it's just interesting to see how if we could get that thinking involved more in the planning phase instead of having it try to be tacked on, you know, bike lanes later at the end of the process. Really have that thinking in there ahead of time would be great. And then in terms of developing their plans, thinking about things like the crosswalks and the curb ramps and lighting improvements and amenities. Also the trail, which has come up a lot tonight. Training and outreach programs to create mutual awareness, and then building those partnerships that are needed to just make our town not only safer, but just kind of think more in terms of walking and bicycling where we're going. So that's what we've got. We'll turn it over to the bike folks.
All right.
If anyone has any questions.
No.
Okay.
Is there anything? So I'll do a little. Listening to all the things that have been said so far today, I wanted to point out a couple of things. The town is trying some pretty innovative new ways to make it safer for bicyclists, pedestrians, and cars to all get along together. Another device that wasn't mentioned is there's a new device called an RRFB, which stands for Rectangular Rapid Flash Beacon. And I think it's active now, right, Mike? I haven't seen it work yet. I've seen it up. And what it's got in common with that device on Maple Avenue, which is called a Hawk, HWK, and it's hybrid. Don't know what the
hybrid activated.
I don't know what the WK part is.
Walking. Something.
Yeah, but what they have in common is that they're dark devices, which means that they're not always in your face. They light up or they do something when the pedestrian is there. So the drivers that drive by every day and never see it, they know something is up when it goes off. So it makes it safer for the pedestrians. And it's also a device that is only used when needed. So no one's there to walk. The cars don't get impeded at all. When the pedestrians are there, they have a safe way to get across. So those are devices that hopefully are successful and can spread throughout town in other places where they're suitable. The other thing that in different ways has been said many times is the real thing that we need to work on is education. We've grown up, the culture here has been set up where we're car-centric. Cars don't really know how to get along with bicyclists on our roads. And in some cases, they don't really get along with pedestrians very well because they haven't been used to seeing them until more recently. And as more people walk and bike, ideally what's going to happen is everyone's going to learn to get along better and learn how to do that. And that's what this education is for, that the chiefs have been talking about, is everyone needs to learn how to safely interact on the roads. Our roads here are largely done. There's not room to expand them and widen them. We've got infrastructure that was built in the 50s or earlier in many cases. And we can make them safer for pedestrians, but it's going to take decades to build all the sidewalks needed in Vienna. The town's been making great progress, but there really are that many sidewalks missing. So in the shorter term, we all have to learn how to safely get along with each other. And for pedestrians and bicyclists, that means learning the rules of safety for the road. When can you cross? The chief went over sorry, I've forgotten the officer's name, went over the regulations, but one of the big ones is crossing at a crosswalk and knowing how to safely cross. And the rule in Virginia is not super pedestrian friendly. It's almost like a catch. It's a little confusing. Cars have to stop for pedestrians, but pedestrians can't enter the crosswalk. The cars have to stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk, but the pedestrian cannot enter the crosswalk in disregard of oncoming traffic. That means you have to make sure there's no cars there before you step into the sidewalk. It also means that your foot has to be in the crosswalk before the cars are obligated to stop for you. So one of the things that people should learn to do is physically put your foot into the crosswalk. And one of the interesting things that is taught in Safer School for kids is to actually take a stance like you're starting a marathon or a run, where you're down looking like you're going to run in, because the cars will stop for the kid. It's not that they're going to run, but you look like you're going to run in, and then you walk across. But that could equally work just as well for an adult. So really, it's up to everybody to learn, and everyone should be looking out for each other. We're not quite there yet. It's a busy area. People are commuting through here, and you got your cell phone and everything else. But if everyone could just start looking out for everyone else, we'd go a long way. So one other thing I wanted to explain in my brief time is what the Transportation Safety Commission is. So both the BAC, PAC are under the Transportation Safety Commission. What they do goes through the TSC, but TSC is simply an advisory body to help. Well, we advise council on basically things that action they can take. And part of our purpose is to really sort of have the public hearings and air out what's going on with the public, try and figure out what their concerns are. And we work with, we have a representative from the Department of Public Works who works, actually we have two, our clerk is also from Public Works. And together, we sort of work together to try and come up with a solution. DPW does the engineering and the heavy lifting. The people in the TSC are not necessarily all experts. There's a lot of us who are lay people. There are a couple of experts on there. But the advantage that TSC has is they see things coming from all over town. And they get a sense of what's really bad, what isn't. Because in some cases, some cases traffic is traffic. We can't stop it. We can't stop it from coming into town. But there have been a lot of innovative things coming up where we've been able to help between, collectively. And then town council is the one that gives, everything goes through council, I think, or almost everything in this town, because yeah, which is pretty much everything. There are things DPW can do. But if you have safety concerns in your neighborhood, a great place to start is if it's something where you think enforcement can help, is go contact the police. If you think it's infrastructure related, reach out to DPW, because there are some things that they can do and actions they can take immediately. And if it's something that needs to go through the system of hearings, the clerk for the Transportation Safety Commission is in DPW, and she can help you it's Jennifer Sigler. She can help do it. The town for a government is very nimble. Things can happen in less than a year in the town in some cases. Sometimes they're longer, as Mike pointed out, because they're longer projects. But this is not like dealing with a larger government. The town can actually do things and take action by quick standards, by government standards, but deliberate, which is good. I'll turn over to Charlie to talk a little bit about what the BAC has been
Sure. I mean,
doing and what's on the horizon.
okay. We're a lot like with Julie, right?
Yes.
We're very much what Julie had talked about, but we're on the bike side instead of the pedestrian side. And we have a lot of parallel projects. One of them is we're also going to go for bicycle-friendly status for the town of Vienna. But some of the things that we're doing, Vienna is very bikeable. I worked in Fairfax County. I was a bicycle coordinator, but I had 4,000 miles of road. Fairfax is huge. A lot of traffic, high speeds. I mean, Vienna is wonderful. I mean, we don't really have a true grid system, but we have damn near close to a grid system. We have a lot of residential streets which are so bikeable. I mean, we heard a lot tonight about the WNOD. I mean, the WNOD is the bikers I-66. But I bike Tapawingo, and I will say I've been in the town for 15 years now. When I biked 15 years ago on Tapawingo, I think I was the only biker on Tapawingo, and today I pass probably 15 bikes. I mean, there are more and more bikes out there, and there are more and more pedestrians out there. So it is growing. It is getting popular. But some of the things that the BAC is looking at is signing routes. We're concerned about safety. So we want to look at the routes. We want to make sure that we can sign these routes that we think are safe, and get the bikers using those routes. My pet peeve is Maple Avenue. I will not bike Maple Avenue, and I know people do. Tim probably bikes Maple Avenue.
Sometimes, yeah.
Nutley Street is a little bit scary. I bike Nutley Street. I probably will never bike Nutley Street again. But there are good, alternatives. So we're looking at those alternatives. We're going to sign those alternatives and get the bikes out there on those routes. We're also looking at some bicycle parking. We hear a lot from citizens in the town, a lot of bikers, they want to shop on Church Street, and they want to go here, and they want to go there, but there's no bike racks, or if there's a bike rack, the bike rack is full. So we're looking at, improving some bicycle parking around the town. The committee just looked at Church Street to see how we can improve Church Street bicycle parking. And then I will mention the bicycle-friendly community status. It's very much what Julie said. It's a long, tedious process. This application is based on August and January, so we're going to go for the January application. So I think the next couple months, the BAC committee members will be busy pulling that data together to submit the application. A lot of people ask me what you get, and I think it's prestige. I mean, it's a hard application. They don't grant it very often. To give you an idea, in this area, of course, Arlington is a bicycle-friendly community. I think they're Silver?
I think so, yeah.
Silver.
Yeah.
City of Alexandria, and Reston, believe it or not. And frankly, I think we can kick Reston's butt. But it's a tough application, but it means a lot. A lot of people nationwide look at these communities and say, bicycle-friendly community, I want to move there. We've heard of businesses in Reston that now that Reston has a bicycle-friendly status, that there's actually corporations who want to move there. And I don't think we'll have that issue here in the town because we're mostly residential. But so those are some of the things that we're working on. And I just wanted to piggyback on, you've heard a lot about education tonight. That really is a big thing. And I have a traffic engineering background, but my daughter just got her driver's license Friday, and my hair is turning grayer. And I mean, I feel for her. And I think about, some of the things that we talked about. We mentioned a hawk signal. 5 years ago, there was no such thing as a hawk signal. Sean mentioned the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the RFBs. 5-6 years ago, there was no such thing. I mean, every year the Federal Highway issues a whole new set of signs and pavement markings. I don't think we have sharrows or shared lane markings yet in the town, but if you go to Falls Church, there's actually new pavement markings for bicyclists. So drivers are just inundated with all these new things. I mean, City of Alexandria they're experimenting with what's called a permitted flashing arrow. God forbid, I mean, this is like, it's just going to require education. It comes down to education. So that's really critical. I'm rambling. Do you want to fill in?
One thing that we often hear about on the Bicycle Advisory Committee is issues related to the WNOD. That is a very common theme. Also, some of you may remember I used to write a column for the Vienna Patch, and the articles that I wrote that got the most feedback had to do with the WNOD. One of the challenges we face is that falls under the Northern Virginia region. No, what do they call themselves now?
Nova Parks.
Nova Parks, thank you. I got used to what they were called, and then they changed it. It's their jurisdiction, so there's only so much we can do in terms of making things work better on the WNOD, but we can work with them to try to improve things on the WNOD. I think a lot of it comes down to education, as we keep saying, and everybody looking out for each other. If you want to start a lively discussion, just say that all of the problems on the WNOD are the fault of this group. Doesn't matter which group it is, you pick a group and say it's their fault, and you'll just have people exploding all over you. The simple fact is, the problems are across the board. Every group has people that misbehave, and getting people to understand how they should behave and interact with each other is critical, and that comes down to education. On the bicycle parking that Charlie mentioned, we've been working to try to identify good solutions specifically for Church Street. Ultimately, we want to have good bicycle parking throughout town. One of the reasons why that's important, not just so that it's convenient for those of us that do like to get around by bike to do so, but it's been proven in studies throughout the nation that when you make it easier for people to get places by bicycle or on foot, business improves. I'm a business owner. That's what I want to see happen. I want more people better able to get to my shop by all means possible, and improve bike parking, pedestrian facilities, etc. is going to do that, and that's going to be good for businesses and for the town. So from an economic standpoint, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and safety is critical.
And just one more thing on the League of American Cyclists application. It's not actually just prestige. One of the great things that comes out of that application is their experts give you feedback on I was described to me as the low-hanging fruit, simple things that you can do to make your town more bicycle friendly. So we're going to actually get a benefit back from doing this. There is the prestige side, but hopefully they'll be able to identify some things that we can do in our town to improve the infrastructure and/or safety for cyclists. So I think if there's anyone from the audience, time to open it up.
Yeah, I've got a comment about the bike trail crossing Park Street. We constantly see adults going right on through. They're taking their own risk and so forth. What scares me is when there's a family, adults with children, and the children go right with the adults, and I'm afraid the children don't realize that they're going to, as they get bigger, they're going to have to make a decision as to whether they should or shouldn't go through. And it scares the heck out of me when I see the children blowing through right along with the adults.
Yep, and it's straight to education, and it's actually educating people how to use a crosswalk, because the same rules apply with the bike as they do with pedestrian. And on the trail, the cyclist is a pedestrian under the state law, or has all the rights and obligations of a pedestrian. But yes, that is one of the number one problems we have, and it's something we have to get through education. And as the chief just pointed out tonight, they're going to start emphasizing that. So hopefully in a year's time you will see some changes. I think they're also changing the intersection design as part of the community center changes. And it's been a long time since I've seen the plan, but I think they've got some things in there to try and make it more a safer crossing. So maybe that won't. I think they're putting some curves in right before it, so that might stop the blow-throughs.
They're actually going to move the trail to the outside to avoid the conflict between the community center, pedestrians walking to and from the community center, and the trail right there. There's been some issues with that. And then I think there's going to be some little bumps just to kind of let people know that they're entering or heading towards an intersection for bicyclists on either side. And so, as well as there will be no entrance to the community center from Park Street. It'll be from Cherry and it'll be from Mill. And so, therefore, that'll also allow not to have a conflict between cars turning, pedestrians driving, or pedestrians walking, or bicyclists, and then also as well as crossing the street. And so it'll make it a little more simplistic in that area.
And this also goes to, I think it was what Tim had talked about. This is the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority that is making these plans. They're consulting with the town, but it's their, but yes, but it's their project. And it also, there's also something else that the mayor talked about, reducing the conflicts at the intersection. So one of the things about the trail is it's on a railroad bed, and if you notice, it's paralleled by roads in lots of places. So it makes for very difficult intersections. You have bicycles crossing across sidewalks where pedestrians are, where pedestrians have just come across, and to give the Church Street crossing as an example, that's Dominion, right? That's immediately adjacent. Dominion's only a few feet off that intersection, so you've already got a controlled intersection and then another conflict point right next to it. So people are coming out in a turn and they're right there. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So these are just inherently difficult intersections that were never designed for all the different modes of transportation that are going on in them. And we can't tear them apart and make them better. I mean, they are what we have. So this all goes to everyone learning, if pedestrians and cyclists learn how to follow the law at the crossings, and cars know what that is, and we stop I do the same thing the mayor does. I'm always afraid there's a cyclist ready to get zoomed through. But if the cars do what they're supposed to do and everyone else does what they're supposed to do naturally, it will get safer. But this takes a lot of time. It's a change in mindset. And the same way that, we've got these new signals where no one knows how they work. Everyone knows how stop signs work. Everyone sort of knows how four-way stops work. We take turns now, even though that's. But these are things that all of this activity in this town, we're going to learn how it works. It's just right now it's tough. Our kids are going to grow up. They're being taught in school and safe routes to look out for themselves. As the biking culture picks up more, it's not going to be a bunch of renegades out there. It's going to be more. It's going to get more like in other areas that have had all this for a longer time. I took a trip to Boston like 2 years ago, and it amazed me how many people were moving through intersections, bikes, cars, and people, without conflict. They were all respecting each other. And I think that's because the culture there has been established a lot longer than it's been established here. But it really is, everyone needs to learn, and everyone needs to be educated, and hopefully the police can help educate some of the people if they have the presence there. Someone has to do the educating. If no one goes out, no one's on site to let these people know, no one's going to learn. And it's not being taught. Well, your daughter just finished. How big was the bicycle education in driver's ed to be able to get their license?
One sentence.
One sentence. So that's, it's not just us. It's things the state has to look at. And the state did sponsor the bicycle and pedestrian safety awareness is a month. So maybe DMV will hop on board, and because that's a great opportunity to teach people. All these high school students take driver's ed, and but the thing is, you can only start training the generation now to get better in the future. It's like recycling. When I was a kid, we were taught to recycle, and environmentalism was a big thing. Well, it wasn't until we became adults that it seemed like it really started through. You have to start early. So Some things we can do things about, some things we can't.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to talk to the high school, kids that are about to enter the driving, because some of them have grown up with the safe routes to school. Some of them are bicyclists, some of them walk, and then they're going to be now operating a car. So how should they be maneuvering within town and make them a little more cognizant of that, especially as they drive around that area of Madison High School. It's always interesting. Sometimes it's little bumper cars in that area near off of what is it, Nutley Street, farther down the area there.
Yep.
So
Yeah, we can do that.
yeah. Any other questions from the audience?
Has the PAC looked at the bike share program? I know we're much smaller, but have you guys thought anything about that, about bringing that into Vienna?
Well, we wouldn't bring it in, the council
Well-
would, but it's,
Well,
I don't think
mean, if you
it's not
look
really
at
established in
different
Tyson's. I mean, we know it's there. So after the League of American Cyclists certification, we'd start talking about a master plan, because we want to get the feedback on what's going on. But I think it's premature to talk bike share in Vienna until you see what happens in Tyson's. But if it does take hold in Tyson's, it would make sense that Vienna is a destination for the people in Tyson's. And if they're coming here, that would be the logical time to expand it, because if someone comes here, good rain, you can drop your bike, you'd want to have a station here, so it encourages us to be a destination.
What
But
about
with that,
Merrifield? 'Cause
Yeah.
if they have it in Merrifield, in Tyson's,
Yeah,
and in Fairfax City,
you'll probably, put on my county hat, even though I'm retired. You'll probably see it in Reston first, okay? And then the other locations, Tyson's most likely second, and then Merrifield, the Merrifield corridor, so down Loring all the way down to Fairfax Hospital. And then from there, there's talk about going into Falls Church, because Arlington's coming out to Falls Church. And so, yeah, I think it could happen. The key with bike share is you need a lot of stations and a lot of bikes, because the whole business model is set up on a very short trip. It's not a bicycle rental. If you go over that a lot of time, you start paying a lot of money. But yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
So one thing to add about that, the town of Vienna is not a voting member, but we attend Tyson's partnership meetings. Actually, there's one tomorrow. And listening to how things have changed. Now, the mayor prior to me was at the beginning of these meetings when Tyson's comprehensive plan was changing around 2010. But they are trying to make Tyson's bicycle friendly. They are putting in lanes. And so it is amazing how that has changed from such a car-centric discussion even to how they're trying to think about pedestrians and specifically bicycle lanes. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves as properties are redeveloped and streets are redeveloped, because part of some of the plans of redevelopment are changing over some of the streets. So I'll be interested to see how that happens, because that will, I think, have an influence certainly here. And certainly as a town, I think it's important to have bicycle access into Tyson's. We want to be able to access that. When I think long-term about the town, we want to be this gem of a community outside of what will be a city, but we want to have bicycle access, we want to have walkability in there, and public transportation to that area. So those are things that we can kind of look to. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but it's something over the next 10 to 15 years that we'll be looking at. So, any other questions? No? Yes.
My compliments for being so thorough.
Well, thank you. I will piggyback on that statement. Thank you so much. I will tell you, one thing that I think is great about the town of Vienna is these are all people that are residents of the community that volunteer and that help make this a better, we're talking about bicycling, but we're also talking about healthy community. We're also talking about environmentally friendly community. So all those things are kind of pulled together. So volunteers make that happen. So thank you to you all for being part of this. And like I said, this is the starting point. We're going to have a lot more discussions over the coming year as well as years as we continue this. And any of you that know of someone who would like to have the police department Sergeant Farhan or Chief Morris come. They obviously are readily available and would like to take you up on that opportunity. So thank you. So thank you to all of you guys. I appreciate your time. So I'd like to make a plug for the upcoming mayors at your service. There's one in November, and I think we'll have a packed room actually. It'll be about I-66 expanding. And so that will be, I'm having Susan Shaw come back and discuss what will be happening with I-66. And then in January, we have Jim Lewis, who's going to be talking about World War II, which is historical and should be really interesting. He always brings in a packed house as well. And then you kind of gave me an idea. I haven't planned March yet, but we'll talk more about perhaps walkable or walk-friendly communities. So hopefully I'll see you all at those, and please let people know about them. So thank you all very much.
It's good to meet you. Thank you very much.